Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Elmarie Wood, and we're going to talk about Black horror films. Again, I've had the pleasure of amassing a group of my friends, and I know this conversation is going to be fantastic because I know them individually, and so I know what's in store. So, if you will, please introduce yourselves. The first person I see on my screen is Michelle. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Michelle Renee Lane, and I write dark speculative fiction, usually about women of color who are fighting or falling in love with monsters.
Nice. Mark?
I am Mark L. Abbott. I am a Brooklyn native, horror author, author of the series Hell at the Way Station and Hell at Brooklyn T.
Great book.
Jamal?
Hi, my name is Jamal Hodge. I'm a poet. I'm a writer of dark poetry, short stories, and film. I'm a filmmaker. I do film, television, documentary, former war journalist. Now it's just right to try to get people introspective into the fact that everyone is just as alive as they are, more or less. Compassion.
Nice. Nicole?
I'm Nicole Givens Kurtz. I'm the owner of Mocha Memoirs Press. We publish Black horror, science fiction, fantasy. We have upcoming releases from March Abbott. We have recently reproduced the Realm series by Elmarie Wood, The Promise Keeper, and Crescendo. And most recently, we had our anthology called Blackened Roots, an anthology of basically zombie horror. I'm also a writer. I write science fiction mysteries. I write horror, and I write weird Westerns.
Excellent. Wonderful. All right, let's just jump in. So I personally love horror movies. I always have. I love all movies. So I watch action, thriller, fantasy. Wow, light on the fantasy, but sci-fi sometimes, even a rom-com every now and then. You know, but I try to. Some of them are funny. Like Love Actually is hilarious. But when I try to think about the first movie that actually made me sit up and pay attention, it's really difficult. But when I think about the first Black horror movie that made me pay attention, it is simple. Blackula for me. What about you?
It was Candyman for me.
Ah, okay.
I mean, it could be because I'm a project child. So I grew up in a housing project. And so it was really, not that I hadn't seen other, like I may have seen Blackula, I don't remember. But the one that made me feel seen and also made me very scared was Candyman because of the realness of it. It was my neighborhood. It was someone who looked like me. It was they had a white female protagonist too. I think most of what happened with him was very relatable. Whereas and I grew up in the 80s, so there's a lot of slasher films. I'm like, I'm never gonna be at a camp like that. I'm not gonna be, they were scary, right? But they weren't in my reality, couldn't possibly be in my reality. They were fantastic horror to watch. But Candyman was real to me. And that was the first time I was actually scared during a horror film.
Be my victim.
Yes. Wait, where's the bass in your voice for that one? Nobody's at the end of that parking lot.
Stop.
Standing there? Oh my gosh.
Yes. It was just so horrible. It is scary, and it was just anyway.
Yeah, that one was dope.
You know what? I'm gonna tell you something funny before the next person goes. I don't know if I've ever told you all this, but I was in this academic conference called Candyman and the Whole Damn Swarm. And I was talking because my paper, I mean, I love it. I love Candyman, the original. And but I did get to the point where I was like, and he's killing all of the Black people. I don't really understand how we're not noticing that he's killing the Black people. Candyman's in the audience, like Tony Todd is sitting there. And I'm just like, okay, I just don't look at me. Don't say anything. Let me just finish what
this is like with the microphone and
I'm like, don't say anything. But I mean, that's an amazing movie. It does blind us. I don't know how people don't talk about the fact that he's killing Black people.
The first movie, he's killing nothing but in the original, he's killing nothing but Black people. The whole movie is kind of
yeah.
It's
you know, when you sit back and you try to analyze it, it kind of makes you, but you know, just if you just watch it, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
I'm gonna not talk. Go ahead, Mark.
no, it's kind of hard to say the black film because mostly it's been images of that caught my attention. I mean, we all remember the first time we saw Dwayne Jones in Night of the Living Dead, Ken Foree in Dawn of the Dead.
Yes.
You know, it's those images that kind of got me going, okay, so we're there. You know, we're surviving. I mean, there's still this debate as to who was the first Black person to actually survive a horror film. I saw somebody had posted it up on Facebook, and I was like, yeah, no, they said it was Kincaid from Nightmare on Elm Street 3, and I was like, no, you gotta go back further than that.
You need to go back way further than that.
You gotta go further than that.
No.
And actually, interestingly enough, on Shudder, if you watch Night of the Demons, they claim that the brother in that is the first brother to ever survive a horror film.
Really?
And well, and but then I go back and I'm like, well, what about Dawn of the Dead? Like, you know,
that's the one I would go with, right?
Didn't he survive? I mean,
he did.
Unless something happened that I didn't see. But I guess if we look at Black horror, I hate to even say this film. I remember seeing P.D. Wheatstraw, The Devil's Son-in-Law, with Rudy Ray Moore when I was a kid.
See, when you start saying Rudy Ray Moore, I mean,
but you know what's messed up? I never saw the beginning. Like when I got older, I saw the beginning, and I was like, "This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my." But there was this moment in the film where, you know, he's matching wits with the devil, and the imagery that he created for that film was actually pretty terrifying. If you're, you know, that mix of kind of eerie funk music going along with the whole supernatural element of it. I remember that like disturbing me when I was a kid. You know, later when I got older and I watched the movie, then I was like, okay, if I knew what I was watching when I saw it, I would have been like, this ain't scary at all.
Right.
I can't get past Dolomite when we talking about Rudy Ray Moore. Like I can't. Don't let somebody ever get close to saying, you know, what do they have or what are they using? I'll say, what has he had? Because that's a line for the movie. I start yelling it, and nobody knows what I'm talking about. But listen, just watch it. You'll know.
I mean, for me, you know, I started watching them at, you know, in the different, like the 90s, mid 90s. So I was like watching Tales from the Hood.
Yep.
That's what really got me into, because it was something I could relate to at the time, because I thought it was tough. You know, it was speaking from a hood standpoint, and but they had like a horror element to it, and it was about the injustices that Black people face and all these different stories and how they came back from it, but then also how we have to take accountability for ourselves as well with the brothers that, you know, that was really deep. The last story with the brother who he killed all the other Black people, and the devil had him at the end with all the it was just to me, it was just a really it was a very complex. It's the first time I had seen like an anthology like that in horror. I had never seen that before, and then all the stories was relevant to like the hood, so it really actually sparked my imagination, and it made me start to explore the genre of horror more, because before everything was just kind of like urban dramas, boys in the hood, you know, all those different things. But once I saw that, I went backwards, and then I saw like Blackula, you know, the Night of the Dead, you know, all these different things that I was just like, I had never seen nothing like that with Black characters. So it was an eye-opening experience, I think, for me, and then it spoke to the people, I felt like, in a different way than a lot of other stuff. So even though I'm watching it back now, I'm like, this is like, it's trash. I'm like,
but you gotta remember, like, it was kind of was right in that New Jack Swing era of the
Yeah.
90s.
Yeah.
And so you
Mhm.
have this, everything's very urban.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so why not this right with horror? We already had like Tales from the Crypt on
Yes,
HBO.
right.
It was
Yeah.
incredibly popular. And then because there was so much happening around Black urban areas because of the whole New Jack thing,
Right.
we were able to produce something like Tales from the Hood. And
Mhm.
it would, because I don't think they've done anything quite like that since.
No.
And we
They
go
tried
through
to
these.
redo it, but it was horrible.
No,
Yeah.
they did 2 sequels. I barely got
Yeah.
past the second one, and I was like, I'm not doing this to myself again. The
Yeah.
third one.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
No, because you know what bothers me with it? It was like the first one, at least it took itself seriously.
That's right.
Then it seemed to kind of spoof itself. The second time around, like it wasn't like there was that one about, if you've ever seen the second one, the one where they have the dolls. This
Oh
girl,
gosh, yes.
and I was like,
He's
what
just like,
the devil are y'all doing?
Yeah, it was
You know,
rough.
and then I'm just like, all right, I'm an hour in, I've already invested my time, I'm gonna go ahead and finish it. I just want to add the other, it's not a Black horror film, but my other favorite urban, The People Under the Stairs.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
I
Right.
love
I agree
yes,
with
that
That was great.
movie
yes, that one was
That was
good.
great. That was
so
really good.
much. And even now, like my brother will call me like fool, you know, and it's like we'll start laughing up a storm. But I loved that movie. That Wes Craven, I give that to Wes Craven
Yes,
because he did it
yes,
twice. He did it with Vampire in Brooklyn,
yep.
and he did it with People Under the Stairs, and he really captured something magical with those 2 films.
Vampire in Brooklyn was my other one. I'm
I
sorry,
think I have to
Michelle.
go there. Yeah. That's
Michelle, you haven't given yours yet, right?
No,
Did you steal it yet? Or because we named like 7 movies.
yeah, so I guess I don't know. I grew up in a very different environment. And so Night of the Living Dead was the first movie that I ever saw with a Black character in it. And when I was young, I knew that there was something really important about that, but I didn't know myself well enough at the time to really understand why it was important. But looking back, I realize now, I am that character. And I was that character growing up because I grew up in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by, well, white people. And so being that young person and seeing that film, it kind of changed things for me because it made me realize, first of all, that the things that I was feeling, like the alienation and the weird fears that I couldn't name, they were real. They were real fears. And so looking back, the connection that I have to that film is super powerful and helps me get a better sense of myself and where I come from. And, also a lot along the same lines as like Salem's Lot for Stephen King as a like, I don't know, it's a murder fantasy, like going door to door, killing your neighbors that you can't stand. That film is kind of like, oh, I get to like kill all of these people that are coming to get me. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents on that.
Let's stick with that movie though, because when he slapped her, I thought
I got concerned for his well-being.
that the actor might be dead. That was a big concern for me.
Yeah.
I kept thinking, is he, and this is back when I saw that movie when I might have been, listen, my parents let me watch whatever for a little while there. I think they realized their mistake at some point, but I was like 9 or 8 or something, and he slapped her. So this is not, I mean, look, I'm older than many, realize. So there was no internet. Let's look it up on Google. That was not happening. And I just remember being like nervous that this man was dead. And I witnessed the moment that this occurred.
Great.
And I was like, it's all fun and games until somebody gets slapped in their face for being like hysterical. And I was like,
right.
he actually
Right.
And I just thought, oh, and then of course at the end, when he was not a zombie and he is dead just the same.
Sure.
Like, and that's foreshadowing. I was really nervous. I really was. But that movie was so important for Black actors. And for this conversation, I don't know, when I say Black horror, I don't know that I mean the whole doggone production. I, produced, majority of the actors. I think we can talk about all of them, because what I don't like sometimes is the Hughes brothers from Hell gets kicked out the window because it's not.
Oh my gosh, and it's so good. I love that movie.
It's excellent.
It's an amazing movie, and we're talking about Johnny Depp, and I'm like, I don't really understand what we're talking about. These directors are Black. Oh, what's the deal here? So
the graphic novel is amazing too, but the movie, it does not get its due. It just doesn't, and it's fantastic.
It is fantastic. But it gets pushed out. So I'm not one of those people who thinks that Black horror has to be, the whole production is Black for it to be Black horror. So I'm let's talk about all the things you think of when it comes to that.
Well, if that's the case, why do you guys consider The Serpent and the Rainbow, which y'all consider that movie a white movie or Black horror movie? Like, you know what I mean? I've never been able to kind of place that, so I don't know.
Yeah, good point.
The Serpent and the Rainbow, man, and I was just talking to somebody about this the other day.
That's random, Nicole. That movie's like 45 years old.
I was talking to someone about Hoodoo the other day, and then I was thinking about The Serpent and the Rainbow. Anyway, it was just, anyway, so I thought it was funny that you brought that up. Yeah. I don't know. I always thought I need to rewatch it because I watched it when I was younger and I felt like it was messy. Yeah. But I need to watch it again as an adult, and I haven't yet.
I mean, if I could submit, I don't know that I think it's a Black movie. I don't know why. I mean, maybe because everything is happening to this white protagonist. And so therefore, so the bad guys or the magic men or whatever, it's all happening to this guy. So maybe it's not a Black movie.
But see, that's the case in Candyman too, which is why I wasn't sure, because until he gets to a certain point where he's like killing all the Black people, but it was kind of questionable, which is why the remake doesn't center whiteness. And so there was some feedback about that. The remake, not the remake. The original. No. The one that
the one that just came out.
It's a sequel.
Reimagining.
It's a sequel, right?
Kind of, yeah, sort of.
Kinda, yeah.
What's interesting about this question about Serpent and the Rainbow is that, so the main character, Bill Pullman's character, is he's the focal point, right? And it's based on like actual events, like going to Haiti looking for this recipe for a better anesthetic for surgeries, right?
Right.
And so what's interesting to me about that is it's a horror movie, but it's set in Haiti, which it's, so culturally speaking, it's presented as the backdrop for a horror film. So just the setting itself, this country where it's predominantly Black people who have practices in magic and things that are different culturally, automatically becomes the setting for a horror film, right?
Something horrific, right?
And so you have the exoticism of it, and you have the fact that you have Black people as essentially the thing that people are afraid of in this movie. Their behavior, their culture, their language, whatever. The political situation in Haiti, you have the Tonton Macoute there as well. And so I don't know, it's fascinating that we question whether or not it's a Black horror film, but the idea that Blackness itself is the element of horror kind of makes it definitely a Black horror film to me, I guess.
Good argument, Michelle. That's
because
a good argument.
Right, because the Blackness is othered, right?
Right.
And if it's other, then it must be feared, right?
Right.
And so
right. And then you also have the element of the love interest, his like sort of like romantic fling is with a Black woman while he's there. And so she like is kind of like his cultural guide and almost like a protector for him. And then automatically that gives him access to her sexually. So I kind of want to talk about that too a lot in some other horror films that I've been watching recently. And the idea that like just inserting a Black woman changes the narrative of the story itself. But
Well, it reinforces the idea that Black women are promiscuous, right? And that and it's the over hypersexualize of Black women too.
Right.
When you add that in, so suddenly you couple that with her being like the magical Negro trope, right?
Yeah.
She's leading him to and giving him access to
magical in this case.
She literally shows him where the magic is.
Yes, right.
Right.
I mean, you know what? You say that, and I think of Angel Heart.
Oh
Yeah. Oh yes.
That's definitely one of those films. I mean, I loved Angel Heart. I mean, I read the book and I saw the film.
Love that book.
And I love the whole twist of who Louis Cyphier was. Like that was like as a kid, I was like, I love that kind of play on words and the devil isn't who you really think he is.
It is, right.
But what's interesting is how they always use voodoo and hoodoo as sort of this evil gateway. Like there's never a clear. What was that movie that came out a while ago? The Skeleton Key.
Yeah.
Same thing. The idea of using this religion, which is not grounded in evil at all.
Nope.
You know, it's got nothing to do with that. But the idea that anything that is not Christian based, there's a problem with it. And it's like, but this whole religion is basically from the earth. It's you becoming one with the elements around you. And I think that would be a safer thing than often, which I question myself now, is like, why is it every time I see a horror film where there's a demon involved or something, why is that? Like, is God on vacation? Because nobody seems to be able to defeat these things. Like, it's like, you know, it's like, I don't understand. It's like, you know, but he bides his time and then he's like, all right, I'll come in there and I'll help you out.
Are you suggesting that the Catholic Church is a gateway for demonic possession? Is that what you're saying?
Let me pause us right here real quick, because I'd love to get back to that, but Jason will never get introduced if we keep going. Jason, I'm glad you made it. I'm so sorry. We are in the thick of it now. Can you give a real quick intro? Give a real quick intro.
Oh man, hey, this is wonderful. I don't want to stop this groove. You guys keep going. I am Jason Henderson. I am in Washington, D.C. I'm a movie buff. I love going to the movies. And being a filmmaker, I've been excited about making films because I would go to the films. And I consider myself a hard movie critic. And so it's hard to be my friend after watching a movie because they think I take it so literally and so strong. So everybody would say the same thing. Well, you need to make your own.
And so you do. And so you do. Okay, let's get back into that because I do not want to lose that momentum at all.
That's right.
What were you saying about the gateway to demonic behavior? What was it?
Yeah, so basically if we go along that idea that like, you know, that like voodoo and hoodoo are considered evil or whatever, I mean, the Catholic Church then is a gateway for demonic possession because that's who is in, that's the foundation of all of those movies, right? Like that's directly part of the.
Well, I mean that has always been the focal point for the majority of horror. Even, I mean, we go all the way back down to Dracula. You know, now, if you've read the book, but there's no indication ever in Dracula that he's afraid of crosses or any of that other stuff. There's never been like a foundation that's set that says, you know, oh, you need this particular item to defeat evil. I think I'm jumping all over here because one of my favorite scenes in movie history is from The Mummy, when
Yes.
he corners the guy and he's got an entire neck full of bracelet and he starts using
Every
everything
language,
Right.
every
he uses,
religion.
the Buddha.
Right. Right.
And he's like, one of these has got to work
Right.
at some point. And it because but I think that when it comes to our image in terms of because of the richness of our history, it's not grounded here, that because it's not understood, then there's got to be an evil element to it. It cannot be a purely, because that's the whole thing with Angel Heart. That's what they were using to stop him. Not it was we're warding him off
Right.
with our magic, and
To see Native Americans there's like 100 different Native American tribes in the United States alone. But when you see Native American magic or beliefs, it's often respected. It's often thought of as being one with nature. It's holistic. It's othered as well, but it's never demonized in the way that hoodoo is. Even Wicca is also not demonized per se, depending on how Christian the audience is. But even Wicca, which is again an othered religion, not Christianity, involving magic and protections and things like that, it is often not demonized either. And so, don't make me say it. Don't make me say it.
Well,
You say it.
I want to say it. I want to say it.
Get to it. Go ahead and say it.
It depends on who's practicing the magic, right?
And what they look like.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I joke all the time that I'm going to open a place called White Suburban Wiccan Wonderland and just sell candles and, whatever. Because it's absurd to me, because it's witchcraft light. It does it like on both sides of my family, there are witches, and guess what? None of them are Wiccan, right? It's witchcraft light. It's incense and candles. It's not even real witchcraft, in my opinion. That's a pretty strong opinion, but you're right. Like it depends.
You have those, Michelle. We're good.
It depends on who's practicing and what the people look like, what their belief structure is. So yeah.
Have you ever seen Sugar Hill?
Yes. It's one of my favorites.
That immediately comes to mind about the use of, I'm done with these fools. I'm going to use something, and not just any, like the most powerful of them,
right?
That she conjured, which is fascinating.
Well, and what I like about that movie, I like the comedic aspects of it, but it is also super vengeance driven, and no one gets away. Like everyone is punished, which is kind of unusual in a way. So there's comedic elements, but everyone gets punished in that movie. Which I think makes it great.
You said comedy, but that makes me think of, because I had a question that I wanted to talk about at some point, only if we needed to, but now that you've said comedy, I feel like I kind of want to ask. Before we got to black horror, or woke horror, or what is the genre? It's black horror, right? Or is it woke?
Black horror.
I refuse to call it woke horror. I'm not calling it that.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so we won't, let's just make that out. Before we got to that point, whatever this is now, we had this whole lock on horror comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, Vampire in Brooklyn is hilarious.
It is.
These things are funny. All the 80s ones. The 70s were a little serious. I think about Ganja and Hess, and I'm like, nobody's laughing at the stuff I'm laughing at when I see this movie, and I'm like, what? Half the time I'm laughing, but most people aren't. But when we get to the 80s, everything is hilarious. At least from the where we're seeing Black creators. What? And even Get Out was fun. Come on, it was funny.
Yeah.
Why is it?
But Jordan Peele is funny, so
Jordan Peele's a comedian, right? But for me, it was what was his name? What was his name? Lil Ray. What's his name? The sidekick. I don't call him
the sidekick.
Lil Ray something. Now I'm gonna have to look it up. But anyway, he was hilarious. My favorite part is when he said, he paused, he says, I mean, I told you not to go in that house.
The greatest scene was him talking to what's her name from Living Single.
Oh,
And she went and
God.
got everybody and brought them in. Tell
That
them
was
what you
funny.
told me.
Right.
And I was
That
like,
was hilarious. But like, why is that the space that, because I feel like we occupy that space best when we're doing, and I don't always like to laugh during my horror, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but when it comes to Black horror movies, especially out of the 80s, that's all we did. So why do we feel like that is the space, or why is it the space that we've been able to occupy most easily, as opposed to a psychological horror or, anything else?
Yeah, I think a lot of times it comes from like a spoof. Like the Wayans did a lot of, they would do a spoof like a teenage horror movie, and we all see it. We all know that the Black guy's gonna die first.
Yep.
So that we as a culture, we knew that. I don't even know if white people knew when they made films that they just off the Black guy first in a horror film. And so for them, they would make a spoof of that. They would make a spin-off on something that was meant to be horrifying. And then we look at it and it's kind of like we joke it. So we look at something like Tales from the Crypts and we laugh at that because it was such a good film, but it was a comedic aspect to it. And things that we can relate to in our culture, we could look at it and say, you know what? I'm not going to fall over like this white girl and just trip and be like, oh, I'm going to die. And we're going to get up. We're going to say, if that was a Black woman, she's going to get up and fight, So I thought those were funny points. Like, watch a Black horror and with a little spoof to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think too, if it's from Black minds, like we're survivors, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think like a major part of being a survivor is having a sense of humor. It's such survival have such an integral part with each other. You know what I mean? So I think it just comes up in our art too. Like in any films we do, any characters we do, even in things in the 70s. I know you said the 80s too, but like Blackula to me is funny as hell. Even in the name, even though it's really deep. Even though it's really deep, it's really deep when you think about it, because it's pretty much a love story, but it's also a metaphor for like Blackness and all this stuff, like how he gets cursed by Dracula, and then he kind of like they show him going over the ship, he does the passage, and then how he keeps on meeting this girl and he keeps on messing it up and killing her over, in the sense, getting her killed, and he keeps on looking for her reincarnation. It's really, Blackula is really deep symbolically. It has a lot of it has a lot of depth to it, but it's funny as hell. Like it's fun, so I just think we're good at combining, because we're survivors, like we're good at combining humor with pain or fear. I mean,
that's what we do. Like that's how we handle really hard situations. We make it funny. And if you look at the ones in the 80s, it was comedians who were making those movies, like Eddie Murphy, right? If you Jordan Peele is a comedian, and so they're going to add that humor element because that's part of what they do. But it's also like who we are as a people. That's why on Black Twitter you hear lots of conversations about like, okay, you read the conversations around macaroni and cheese at Thanksgiving, right? Well, your weave look dry. Well, so did your macaroni. Like that's just how we are as a people. And so that's how we cope with things. It's the humor, because sometimes you can't do anything but laugh.
That's right.
I will say this. I watched The Blackening, and I walked away upset.
Did you?
Because the killer, I was like, that was me. That's why I don't play spades no more. because cats took that thing too seriously. Like this is exactly like when he explained why he was doing what he was doing, I didn't find it funny anymore. Because I was accused of the same thing when I did.
Like, it's too close. Mark's like, that's too close to home right there. Brother, uncomfortable.
I did.
Oh, you almost made me cry over here because.
But the whole dynamic, especially that movie, because my wife and I watched it, and we were sitting there hollering when the sister was trying to swim away, and the killer came back, and she turned around and she was like, "No, leave him alone." And I was like, "Yeah, that's something we would do. That
is like, something we would do.
We're not going to leave each other behind."
Right.
But you know, we'll go back and we'll start screaming at the killer. But yeah, those, I think humor is something that because we're always in this uncomfortable zone.
Yeah.
We have to
It's
use
always
it as
been that.
it's a weapon.
Yeah.
I will say that if you go way, 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 way back, like the first Black horror movie, Son of Ngagi,
Yeah.
Spencer Williams created that, and he was part of Amos and Andy, comedian.
Mhm.
There we go.
Yeah.
I mean, they were talking about, what was that, the 37 or 40, one of them, 1937 or 1940, I can't remember, but you know, so it's kind of always been that.
Yeah.
Oh God, Mark, you had posted on Facebook about a movie that you watched, and it was supposed to be funny, but you couldn't laugh. Oh, what was it?
Oh, it was the thing with Jamie Foxx.
They killed Tyrone.
They
They
killed
killed
They
Tyrone.
closed Tyrone.
Oh,
I
yeah.
could not
Yeah.
laugh at that.
Oh,
I couldn't find anything that was
for
one
me,
of
it
the
was a horror film.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it was to the point where I know the moment it started to disturb me was when they were eating the chicken.
Yeah.
And everybody
Dude.
starts laughing.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it was at that moment I was like, this isn't funny anymore to me. This is too close to home. Because because these are conspiracy theories that we've grown up with. These are the things where, you know, when I was in college in Atlanta, you know, people were like, yo, don't eat at certain chicken spots because they put stuff in it and it's gonna make you sterile and it's all these other things. And literally you would avoid these places because you're like, I don't want to end up like that. And I don't know. Once we got to that point, I was like, okay, I want to laugh at some of this stuff. You know, like I think the one part I had to laugh at was when Jamie Foxx got caught in the van and got upset because they couldn't get him out. And I was like, I had to laugh to actually release the tension from myself. So good. And
I think the church was the one that got me. Growing up with my grandmother's pastor, my mom was an evangelist. Church, you know, it was. That hit me square in the chest, and I could not. I was just like, oh my! It was things I had thought, right? Things I had read, comments people have made about, you know, following white Jesus. Or when missionaries go over to Africa, it was always a gun in one hand and a Bible in the other. And so when you see that, when I saw that in They Cloned Tyrone, I was very quiet. Because it just hit me square in the chest how satirical it was, but also how it was uncomfortable how close it was.
Well, I literally almost gave up on Lovecraft Country. The first episode, when they fled the restaurant, and I'm sitting there and I had the remote in one hand. I said, I swear to God, if I don't see a monster in about 5 seconds, I'm not watching this. I don't need this stress. I don't need this level of stress on a Sunday night. This is way too damn stressful for me. Because it was too real. You know, it may not have been something I went through, but my mother went through that.
My mother went through that.
In living in the
my
South.
Grandmother for sure.
And
look, we're from Tennessee.
I was like, if I don't see a creature, if I don't see a Cthulhu or something, we're gonna have a problem with this show, because I'm gonna be the one brother every week. People like, you watching Lovecraft?
No.
Nope. Not me.
I couldn't finish that show. Them was too much for me.
Damn, that's why I was gonna bring it up. That was
was hard to watch.
I couldn't do it. Made like
I finally got through it.
I couldn't.
So I feel like Them was not Lovecraft Country. I feel like Them was. And I know there was conversations online about it being torture porn, and I felt like there is a line. There is a line. These things happen, but you don't have to show it. Right.
Yeah.
And so you could have hinted at it. There are ways that it could have been done tastefully in a way, and I don't feel like they did that. I felt like they wanted to be edgy, and it crossed the line that I feel like didn't need to be crossed. I did feel like, and so I watched like 3 episodes and I was done. After the baby, I was done.
I wasn't. I watched the entire thing, but I I had to take a break after the baby
After the
episode.
baby.
Yes.
Yep. Same.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Almost didn't come back after the baby, but I was like,
Yeah.
I really feel like I need to know what's going on here. But that threw me. That threw me.
Mhm.
I bailed. I'm sorry. Y'all better
No,
people than
no,
me.
no.
I couldn't.
It doesn't get any better. I mean, I don't want to say it doesn't get any better. That's cruel. But it just didn't.
It gets worse.
It just. I said, okay, that's probably the worst thing I could see. So therefore, where's the horror that's supposed to be traditional horror? Because there's supposed to be something here. That's how you marketed it. Where is it? And I felt like, when you're searching for that and you don't find it, it was really difficult to see all the rest of what they were showing us.
And so Mark was saying, like, for Lovecraft Country, you need to see a monster, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so I feel like with them, it's real life horrors. It's no different than 12 Years a Slave or any other really difficult, realistic, right, movie based on our trauma.
Yes.
And I didn't feel that. A lot of people didn't like Jordan Peele's Us, but I freaking loved it.
Yeah.
So, I loved Us.
Yeah.
Let me
I
ask
actually liked Us better than I liked Get Out.
Interesting. I don't know that I do, but I see why people do. But let me ask you this, because we're talking about trauma. What did you think about Antebellum?
I didn't even bother. I didn't see it.
You didn't see it? Oh, okay. Well, then we may not be able to speak. What's her name?
No.
What's that? If she goes and
let me. I got something. I got something to say.
Yeah. Let's hear it. Uh-oh.
So, what I don't like is when you try to make a fool out of me with certain things. And I'm sitting there watching this thing and I'm like, okay, I'm thinking Kindred. I'm like, the woman has somehow gotten transported back in time.
Mhm.
And then you pull some old M. Night Shyamalan crap where she's been the whole time, she's been in an actual recreation of the Civil War. And I'm like,
It's the village.
The
village all over again.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Who is hiding Black people like this?
Yeah.
And like when the phone went off, I was like, what the hell? I was like, all right, you know what? I see what you were trying to do. I would have been.
Stop it.
Imagine they picture it's like it's The Village meets Roots.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
That's so well said. I can't even.
That was the writer's room.
Yeah, that was like that new movie. I went to go see Origin, Ava DuVernay new movie, and it's the very same thing. You have shock. There's points of shock, and I think when it comes to horror, you should have a point of shock, something that shocks you. But it when I think of films that are racial, like I walked out of the film, I felt like it was too much for me, Ava DuVernay's movie. And it feels horrifying. It's horrifying to look at what Blacks went through, or what she showed what Jewish people went through, or the Mullahs in India, right? And so it's horrifying. It was horrifying. I felt like walking out, but it was that good. She took us to the edge. She took us to the edge where it almost could be gorish, and then it's like she brought it back. So the difference between a horror movie, when I think of something horrifying, is something that tips you over. And it's like, oh man, I couldn't believe that happened in the film. And so when I look at Get Out, when I think of Jordan Peele's Get Out, I think about it as a Black man, right? So from a Black man's perspective, and I'm like, does this really occur, right? There's an undercurrent about how white women go after these athletes, and we see it. There's a reality, right? And then to think that the pop is in on it, the brothers, and I'm sitting there like, now that is crazy if that's how they are, you know? And it sounds conspiracy, but it's horrifying at the same time. So,
I think that's why I liked Us, because first of all, it's a Black female centered, right?
Yeah.
And so that also that really, and the idea of her doing, I want to talk about Strays too, which is also another Black female oriented. But I think for me, I like Get Out. I liked it a lot. But for me, Us was a trauma of being abandoned and lost And then your parents kind of not understanding you enough to know that you were not you, that you were somebody else. So all that sense of alienation and all those things that occurred spoke to me as a weird Black chick. And so I really liked us. I liked the fact that she was willing to fight for her family, or to fight to keep what she had now cobbled together as a family. That she was very proactive, and that it was weird, it was funky, but it was about a family, a Black family in a horrible situation. And I had not seen that before, where a Black family is centered as the people who are trying to get out or survive. It's always a white family. And so that also was something that sat well with me.
Let me say this and see what you guys think about it, because I like Us, okay? But I didn't like the emasculation of the Black man in that movie.
Yeah, I don't think he was.
I think so. And as a Howard grad, he's wearing a Howard sweatshirt.
Oh God, can you stop it?
No, I can't. This is how I felt about it.
He was, I don't think it was an emasculation. He just didn't take over. No, it was not.
I don't know.
He didn't take over. And I feel like he did what he needed to do for his family too, but not in your atypical, action-oriented Black male role. And so
you're not in the same, like a 6'3", 260-pound guy just standing out there like, oh.
But I do think that that's good to show, because just because you're a big Black man doesn't mean that you have to behave in these categorically boxes, that you may actually be afraid to move. You may be too stunned to react, and that is okay. And so part of us for me was breaking all the tropes and showing that.
I just lost both of you. It got all garbled. I missed both of you.
Sorry.
Something about tropes, and I don't know what you said, Jamal.
She's just saying that it's okay to show that image because it's different, but it happens. She's trying to but you know that's a good point. I think that's a valid point.
That's a good point. I don't know. Come on, Michelle and Jason and Mark.
You mad because he wearing the Howard shirt.
Yeah, I didn't like that. I'll be honest.
If he had like North Carolina A&T, you would have been fine.
See, it's a blackening all over again.
It's representation. If you feel like you're a part of it, it draws you in. You watch a movie like Candyman, and it's like you look at people that look like could be your uncle or somebody. You know what I'm saying? So you kind of have these images. We have images that we carry, whether it's in the church, whether it's in family, whether it's in our workplace. We see something, right? We say, man, that looks like what we are connected to. So all those years before, my horrifying movie was Salem's Lot. That was like growing up as a kid. It terrified me. I hated it. There's something about that movie, right? But it was no Black people in it, right? You know what I'm saying? So we grew up in a time where we weren't seeing Black people, right? And so now it's like, okay, now put this person in that place. And it's like, yo, it's scary because it looked like my homie, or it looks like my dad, or it looks like my uncle, or something like that. And when Robert Townsend did that little spoof, he did a little thing in Hollywood Shuffle. He was talking about the Attack of the Street Pimps. The guy said, man, he said, what made that so he said, what made it so horrifying is that the dude looked like somebody around the corner from me, right?
Yeah.
And that's connectivity. We looked at white films for so long that we had to make Black horror films so that we felt in the theaters what they felt. Yes. Representation. So I love this conversation. Love it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I should have worn my Howard t-shirt. I should have just because I'm just saying.
But see, it's just like Strays though. Like even in Strays, there was a lot of feedback about how she left her kids twice. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, men leave their children all the time, and it's not a big to do in a movie that he just left. The dad just left. Mm-hmm. But because she just left, it was a big to do because she's a mother. And I feel like if we don't start, these are within the confines of our community, we have to start addressing those stereotypes for us as well internally. And that stereotype that she actually said men leave all the time. She actually says that in the movie. And so she's really confused why you mad, why her kids are mad at her. You wouldn't be mad. You might be upset if your dad left you, but because she's a mother, she got a much more harsher, she received a lot more harsh words and feelings from her
I
children.
think just to play devil's advocate, it's because you feel more connected to your moms because you were in her body. You know what I'm saying? For like a while, and she nurtured you. It's not the same. You know what I'm saying? It's just
So let me just put this
I
out
don't have
here.
the same relationship or connection. This, dads get socks on Father's Day. They don't get like this.
Time out, right? Because I have 3 adopted children. They did not grow in my body. Okay, so they're
Not
still my
everybody,
kids.
but I'm just saying in the movie. I'm
still
saying
very close to us, right? They're probably more close to their dad than they are to me, to be honest. But they are close to us. But I hear you. But I feel like that is also a societal trope or expectation.
Oh, sure.
Because some women are not. They can grow a baby, push it out, like, hey, here you go, I'm done. There's no connection just because they had a baby. And so the expectation that mothers are somewhat more nurturing, they have to be, is one that's cultivated by society. It's not actually a real thing.
That's true, Nicole. That's true.
It's like a
Michelle, you had your hand up.
So I kind of, this idea of motherhood, the idea of motherhood as part of the whole like landscape of horror, because the idea is that, like, you have mothers who give birth to monsters, you have mothers who become monsters, but this idea of nurturing as an automatic character trait for women who give birth or can let's just say people who can give birth. That's complicated. That's way more complicated because it's not a natural progression of ideas. Like, there are a lot of women who are demonized in our actual society because of their choices to have a baby, to not have a baby. The idea that society is trying to tell you what you can or can't do with your body, that's horrific enough. That's problematic. And so just this assumption that, like, that a woman who decides to walk away from that responsibility is somehow
terrible, awful,
or if she's evil. Sometimes you have to walk away from things to be able to be who you're meant to be. And sometimes those things that you walk away from are your children.
Ooh,
and then
there's a hard statement in there. Ooh, Michelle.
Michelle, you're saying that, and I'm sitting here thinking of one of the most non-Black horror films of all time. It still disturbs me, which is Rosemary's Baby.
It's Baby,
And what he says at the very end was, you don't have to join us. Just be a mother to your child.
Yeah,
right. And it's like, what?
Yeah, but my child is literally
is
Satan's son.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, just look at his eyes. I mean,
guys later.
Meanwhile, I'm sitting on the couch trying to like rethink my life after seeing that movie. I was like,
I just watched it. I just watched that again around the holidays because technically it's a holiday movie. There is a Christmas tree in the.
This is true.
I do this every year. I watch horror movies and tell myself I'm watching Christmas movies.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
But yeah, that's a heavy movie. That's a heavy movie. It's way heavier than we remember. So every time I see it again, it gets heavier and heavier.
But I think the same about Stepford Wives too, Michelle.
That's a heavy movie.
We missed a little bit there,
That's a heavy movie.
So I was thinking about that Black Mirror episode where they have the slave is like on display at the museum.
Okay.
And the person, if you go there, you can experience what it was with his life.
Yep.
Do you guys has everyone seen that one?
I don't think I've seen that one.
Black Mirror episode.
I must have missed that.
Is that the one with
where
they're executing him over and over again?
Yes.
What?
Not slave. He's executed. That's right, Mark. Thank you.
I'll be watching that tonight. Well, tell us a little bit about it.
Wow.
What thought? I mean, what are you thinking about it when you think about being executed over and over? Just the spectacle, or
No, it's the idea. Go ahead, Mark. So I've talked a lot.
Well, the guy, it's basically this man who opened up a museum, and he's got all of these devices that he's made over the years that people have used that have caused like people mutilating themselves, etc. But what he does is he goes to this prison. This man is going to be executed for murder. And he tells the black guy, he says, listen, I can put you into this device, and then I will let you go because once you die, your soul can come into this device, and then I'll free you. But what he does is he takes him to this place, puts the man's soul in a chamber, and has people come and pay to pull the switch. So every day he is being executed in the electric chair over and over and over, to the point where he's literally a shell of himself. Like he can't, and I don't want to give away who it is that comes to the museum, because that's the real shock.
Yes.
The real shock comes at the end, but it's one of those, you brought it up, and I just remember just feeling some kind of way about it when it was
I did
over.
too. Mm-hmm.
Even though the ending kind of was like, okay, you got what was coming to you, it still was just to know that somebody would do that to someone, and then it's a black man. Right. So it's yeah.
I think, go ahead, Lisa.
Let me cut in really quick, because I know that we're doing a weird swap. A lot of us are going to stay, unfortunately, but Jamal has to drop. But before he goes, I would like him to give us one Black horror movie so that people are going to write a list. I just wrote that one on my list, that Black Mirror episode. Give us one so everybody's writing something down we can look at later.
Oh, I mean, of course, I'm going to say Tales from the Hood.
Yeah, but we already talked about Tales from the Hood. Give us something obscure.
That's all the ones I was gonna say. I was gonna say Tales from the Hood. I was gonna say Get Out. I was gonna say Candyman, the original. You know what I mean? I was gonna say you know, Serpent in the Rainbow, but we're not sure where that lands. I just thought that was a really weird, messy, trippy movie. And People on the Stairs. Those are the movies that I can think of. There's nothing, you know, we don't have like a super large Rolodex.
There's that.
You know,
That's
so
true.
kind of like we kind of more or less all know what the selections are, more or less. It's like you know, I'm gonna try to finish them though, just to get through it, because I heard they're doing like a season 2.
Oh
What?
no! I mean,
No, they're not.
I swear.
I mean, I don't respond to that. I don't.
Nicole.
Oh.
I don't know.
It was rough. I mean, I don't know, get through it. I'm gonna put People Under the Stairs because I think I should revisit that. I really enjoyed that movie. But okay, so Tales from the Hood and People Under the Stairs for sure. Yeah, we should do this again because the time went too fast as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Like 2 hours if we need.
Honestly, and that won't even be enough then. The rest of us are going to stay. I just wanted to, and you can stay as long as you want. I just know you said you had another thing, so I want to make sure I got your movie.
I've been texting them just to make sure that I could come in a little later, so I got like about 7 more minutes.
Excellent. Go. All right, go ahead, Nicole. You were saying? I told you to hold on to it.
Blink, blink, blink.
Let's do this, because we were still talking about the Black Mirror episode, but there are 2 things I definitely wanted to hit on if we can. And since you have 7 minutes, Jamal, maybe we can hit this part first before you go. Hollywood has been remaking stuff. He and I were talking about this the other day. Remaking things and putting Black characters in it. What comes to mind, not horror, but like Ariel. Or when they were talking about having Idris Elba play 007. Like, okay, so what do we think about this?
Well, you know my thoughts.
I want to hear it.
Well, don't all crucify me at once, guys. But so my thought on it is this. It's a little elaborate, but I'll try to explain. I like what it does for images for the young people, because they're not thinking about all the political connotations around it. So on that end, it's really good. It's really good because it's just good to have things that you love look like you. That's just about basic, right? But But what I hate about it is that I know that a lot of these executives, they don't give a damn about the Black community, right? So I ask myself, why are they doing this? So to me, what they're doing is that they're pretty much are putting blackface on white characters because they're not like taking Ariel and taking Little Mermaid and putting it in the entire environment in like Africa or in immersed in Black culture, right? They're just making this one character Black, and they saying that this is somehow empowerment or trying to sell it to the people as some sort of encouragement, but really they're just taking an old beat up story that they're already rehashing it and putting blackface on it and then trying to sell it to the people as something new so they can get our dollars because they know that we move the needles. We're the needle movers. We move the needle, right? As a community, as a culture. So I feel like in a lot of ways, what they don't look at people like you guys, like us over here, writers who have stories and fables and things we've written with Black characters. It's not coming from Black minds, Black writers. They're not putting their dollars behind to support Black creativity.
Ooh, man,
to bring something to people. You know,
yes,
what
sir.
I mean? So that's my thoughts on it. I think it's a big scam. I think that they're creatively bankrupt, and whenever that happens, they always try to use us. Like, and then when they get back up, they discard us, like what Tubi is doing right now to Black creators.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's my feelings on it,
Yeah. Yeah, but I think it's a good idea to try it. You know what I'm saying? Like Nightmare on Elm Street, they make it like Nightmare on U Street in DC. Something like that would be kind of cool to show Black people experience. How would we handle it if we were in that situation? Or the one film that came to my mind when I was growing up was this film called The Car. I don't know if you guys seen The Car.
I love
Absolutely.
The Car.
And it would be dope to have like a hoopty, you know what I'm saying? Like, and this hoopty would just chase and knock down people. And it was a car that like a Monte Carlo, one of them kind of cars that everybody knows.
I love that. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And that's like the best thing I heard tonight.
Yeah.
I love that.
Man, the birds, all these different Sherlock Holmes. It would be fun to have Black people in there, and I have a crazy mind to think like that, right? But not crazy enough to shoot it that far. My creativity goes but so far, even in horror, because of the way I live. My life is unique. I think it's just very unique as a writer and what's in my head. And I'm like, man, the horror films that I see, that I want to kind of ask you guys a question, because when I think of horror, I can't think of horror without the sound and the music that go with it. Like, you can't put race on music. You can't put race on the sound. So when I did a film and I had to make horrifying people, and I tried to find sound that could fit this to get people heart, to feel it. How do y'all feel about music and sound in horror films or Black horror films? The ones that really scary.
Oh, go ahead, Jamal. You say.
I just feel like in horror, I mean, I think in all film, sound is more important than visuals in a sense.
Yeah.
I think the music is kind of like, I mean, music is so important to us culturally on so many levels as well. But I think that most of the time, I don't think there's enough of us that's actually doing the music, doing the sound mixing, the sound design on that area of it, to be honest with you. I know that Bill sometimes has people back there that look like us doing it. And I think his movies have a unique feel because of it. Like, you know what I'm saying? But I don't think there's enough of us in that space who's actually operating. I know one guy, Cadell Cook, I'm gonna shout him out because he's great. That's on sound. He's a sound engineer, and he does like all the shows. He does film, everything like that. But he's only like one of two that I've known in the industry in like over 15 years. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like it's not a lot of us. You know what I mean? there's not a lot of us in that space. I think there should be more because I think we do bring a unique feel to things, you know?
Yeah.
That is one thing I
you-
would say about, I'm sorry, Nicole, the
No,
Jordan,
go ahead.
Jordan Peele's music is stellar. Like whatever,
Yes.
flipping amazing.
I
Because
was going to talk about how I got 5 on it, and how it slowed down for the
Yeah.
trailer for us, and
yeah,
that freaked everybody out because it was just like we knew the song,
yeah,
but we did. It was the creepiest version of "I Got 5 on" I've ever heard.
for
And
real.
And it was
that
so
made,
black.
like-
It was so black the way
It
they made it
was.
sound like that, right? It was so black. I was like, damn, this is hot. Like, yo,
It
you
was
know what I
great,
mean?
but
Like-
it was creepy, but it was great. But so often it feels to me like with Bones, if you think about Bones, if we have a rapper involved, it's just going to be the rappers, whatever their tracks are. And I don't think that's the same. It's not the same vibe. I mean, it doesn't do the same thing for me. So I agree that we need to have some more people.
Yeah.
Michelle and Mark, what did you guys think about the comment about adding the black, and Nicole too? What do y'all think about adding, like, just making the character black? Because I'm curious.
I feel like I need to think about that a little bit more because you made some interesting points, Jamal, because honestly, I don't think you're wrong. Like I think you have some really valid points there. I don't know that I've really thought about that. And I feel like I want to think about it some more because the idea, I mean, yeah, there are plenty of stories that could be told with Black characters, Black writers, and that's just not happening. This rehashing of old stories, and yeah, I never thought about it as being blackface. Thank you for that. Yeah, that gives me something to really think about. And honestly, it makes me a little uncomfortable, and I like that too. I like feeling uncomfortable because it makes me think about things. So thanks for that.
Make everybody uncomfortable.
So some of this is a deeper dive though.
Yeah.
Because, for example, this isn't a horror film, but my wife and I went to see Harry Potter and the Cursed Child.
Yes.
On Broadway. Now, Hermione,
yep,
is Black.
Oh.
And according to J.K. Rowling, she's Black in the book.
She's always been brown.
She's always been brown. But that's not how they've portrayed her
at all
in the films at all.
No.
People have often, and some people have said, well, she should have said something. I'm like, to who?
That's not the way it goes.
If somebody was cutting the check that big, I don't think her getting up there going, well, you know, Hermione's Black. I think when the play came out, she was like, she gonna be Black today.
Yeah.
So it was like, and I mean, even like my daughter and I went to the exhibit here, and they have the outfit from the play, and my daughter looked and she was like, wait, Hermione's Black? And I was like, yeah, that's why I told you can cosplay her. Not that you couldn't cosplay her if you didn't want to, but so oftentimes what's crazy is that some of these characters actually might have been originally of color. And because of the original make and model of however Hollywood wanted to slap this out, that wasn't going to bring in the dollars. So we have to turn it, like I remember Neil Gaiman, the whole thing was, you're going to do American Gods.
This is how you're going to do it.
Be Black.
Because he is in the book.
Because that's what he is in the book.
Yes.
Right.
And so sometimes, and I agree with Jamal, because it is a money thing. It is a money grab at the end of the day. But then there's also that who didn't have enough power to stand up and say the character needs to stay this way because that's how I envisioned them. And so if we do a remake of it, and the character happens to show up, like I gave a prime example, my brother and I went to see Dracula on Broadway some years ago. They had a Caribbean man playing Van Helsing, who apparently couldn't figure out whether he wanted to use his Jamaican accent or his British accent. He kept jumping between the two. So,
Bye, Jamal. Thank you.
So, all right. But I'm reading Dracula, and there's a moment in the book where Mina Dracula came after her, and they're describing Van Helsing holding her hand, and they describe his hand as being dark. And I'm like, he's black? And then I realize he could be, because he's Dutch. And if he's from the Dutch West Indies.
Oh,
shoot.
I
Because
never
again,
thought
remember,
about that.
You know what?
Quincy is American.
Yep.
So it wouldn't have been a far-fetched that Brown, because there were black people in England.
What?
You didn't know?
Looking at water I just sipped.
Yes.
It's a chance, but I mean, because they never actually say what. But when I saw that, I was like, wait a minute, his skin is brown. So what does that mean?
Yeah.
You know, have we been, you know, all these years he has been Peter Cushing. And everybody else. He's not really been like, you've never run into a brother who was like.
Let's let Idris play dad. I want Idris to play that.
You know, so now, okay, now that you've said that, two things have come up for me. One, that means I can go back and write my original master's thesis and tell everybody to kiss my ass. And the other thing is, I got into an argument, about a 3-day online argument with someone, because I went to see The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Okay.
Oh, I love that movie.
And one of the main characters is a black character.
Yes.
And which it tracks from the part of the world that he hopped on the boat, everything. Okay. So, but I got into an argument with someone online, because, you know, as you do, that they were, you know, they were trying to go for the diversity grab, right? And I'm thinking to myself, you do realize that Black people existed in that time period, and they weren't just in Africa or slaves. Like, they were all over the world as doctors, lawyers, living everywhere, all over the planet. And it would not be uncommon for a Black person to be on a sailing vessel, like pirates. Hello. Okay. Right. And so it infuriated me that the idea that this person genuinely believed that the only reason that you would include Black characters in a period piece would be to up diversity. It's like, where the hell do you think Black people were throughout all of history? They were everywhere.
They don't,
right.
They don't depict us in those time periods. There's like the whole brouhaha about the painting that had the biracial boy in the background that was painted over as a tree. We didn't recognize him as part of the family till they cleaned it up. Like, so all these things were hidden. Queen Charlotte, okay. But I think so. I agree with Jamal. I do think sometimes it's a money grab, because they don't. And you know, this gets talked about a lot, especially in fantasy now. When they're rolling out characters, it's always diverse cast. But if the only movie that actually gets this right with a diverse cast is I can't think of it now, but I think it's important. So my beef with Hermione is I read all those books and I taught them, and so I spent a lot of time in that text. She talks about Hermione being brown. She talks about Hermione's hair being big, but she never once ever gave any. If you read it, there's no indication that she's not just a dirty white girl. Like, there's nothing nothing that hits at all. And so, even me as a Black person reading it, I am not picking up any indications that this character is a Black person.
I never assumed that.
I never assumed that either.
Just from reading the text, you don't get that. I think for me, and I'm calling Rolling out on this, I feel like it's an afterthought. And she can't own it the way Neil does. Neil Gaiman owns it with Death being Black and what's the one?
The Sandman.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
Sandman.
Yeah, Sandman.
Yeah. So he called out. He goes, it was very white. I didn't like that. So I wrote a cast of different people. Okay. And Death still acts like Death. You can't take Death and say, hey, you make it African. It's still Death. And the way, because it falls into the universe that he created, right? So it still works, even though. But he publicly said, I realized later on this is very white, and I'm going to change it up so that everyone can enjoy it. Yeah. He owned it right up front.
No, I completely agree with you, because I said the same. Like when I first saw her, I was like, huh? Because there was a huge dust up in Britain about the fact that Hermione.
Oh,
and
I
then
remember.
That's when she came out, and I was like, Hermione's Black? You know,
she did the same thing with Dumbledore being gay, and people were like, "Are you serious?" Because you didn't write any of that in this book. I read all 7 volumes.
I just learned that just now in the chat. I was today old for that. So
I'm like,
yeah, it was a very much an afterthought, but I think it's important, as Jamal said. I think it's great for representation, so kids see people who look like them and stuff. But I think as adults, we could recognize what to take our kids to see to support, whether those things are money grabs or whether those things are like, I don't think we need I don't think we need another 007. And B, I don't think it matters what race he is, because it's the same.
Yeah, I mean, he's double.
You're not changing anything, right?
But the funny thing about that,
didn't he die? Let's call it done.
But
I never
wait.
understood why we were coming back to this.
Here's the thing. They already have a 007 and she's Black.
Yeah, she is.
They already
Oh, that's right.
The call sign to,
that's
to
right. That was her.
So that's why I'm sitting here going. So,
why are we having this conversation?
No, my question was, why does it have to be a man?
Yeah, there's that.
The system beat the hell out of
That has come up too. Why does it have to be a man?
I'm willing to see her as 007. You don't need to call Idris in to pass the torch.
Bond man. Sorry. It's way past my bedtime.
I love it. Before we wrap up, because we are just going to keep going if we don't stop ourselves. But I want to go back to the music conversation that Jason brought up, because we it was all mixed in. And I wanted to break it out a little bit. Let's talk about that music. I made the comment, he made his comments about looking for stuff and not finding it. We all agree that the music that Jordan Peele used was stellar. I can't remember the music for Nope, though. Was there music?
What? Oh, yeah.
I don't
remember anything about it. I need to watch it again.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I feel like it needs another viewing, because I'm stuck on one part and my mind won't move past it. So I just need to understand like how the thing didn't, it's the end. I don't know how the thing didn't recognize that wasn't flesh and not spit it out. So I'm having trouble with that, because for me, the monkey's the star of this movie. And I know that that's not what's going to happen.
That's the most chilling part.
So I know, but to me, I was like, this is great. This is going to be great. And then it didn't, it went a different way. And it wasn't bad. It was just not what I thought it was. So I need to go back. But because of that, any music references there are just lost to me. So I need to watch it again. But Bones used rap because it's Stu, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of our Black horror movies, especially in the 80s and 90s, and I'd say now, are using rap music. But is that really doing justice to the actual theme of the movie or not?
Yeah. Like you have a soundtrack, but then you also have like sound. You have sounds, like you hear a door creeping, or you hear these sounds in a horror movie that get you, where it's like a heart beating or something like that. And it's like texture, the texture that they put inside of a film that have you sitting on your seat, that you feel it, you get underneath the covers because you're wondering what's going to happen next. Or you might just hear that piano just ding, ding, ding. You're like, oh, something about to happen. So, when I think about sounds, I think about soundtrack, but then it's also, the actual sound engineering that makes us connect to a movie, that makes us feel the texture of a sound or of a scene that makes you like, I'm afraid. You can scare somebody else in that same moment. You like, if you're watching it with your spouse or significant other, you know something's about to happen. You can scare them. So to me, when I think about that, Black movies being able to have really good soundtrack, music that fits eerie moments, or something that's kind of like, it's gory or something's about to happen. Movies that stand out like that, like Friday the 13th,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing more disturbing than the sound of like that weird croaking sound that comes out of a Korean ghost's mouth.
Oh, why did you remind me of this? It haunts your dreams.
I hate that.
And
it's
kids
terrible.
make that sound for fun. They don't actually know what it is. So when a kid starts doing it, I'm always like,
stop it.
Yes.
Well, honestly, sometimes it's the absence of sound. I think
that too.
One of the most nerve-wracking parts of Get Out was the beginning, when he's walking down that quiet street and the car goes past him, and you're just like, oh yeah, I've been there. On several occasions, it's either that or when they pass you in the hood and they're looking at you and you're like, just keep looking forward, just keep looking. Oh no, then we drop some music in and then you're in trouble.
Those old-fashioned songs, though, they get me every time.
No,
don't play something from the 30s. I'm about to turn
do
it off.
not play anything from the Platters or from like, I don't know what that is. Like there was Jeepers Creepers.
Yeah.
Like the Jeepers Creepers. Where'd you get why?
It was a nice song until they put it in that movie.
To this day, I cannot listen to Mr. Sandman and not think of Halloween 2.
At all.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm like, why? Y'all can find all the songs in the library. You chose that one.
It's some old hymns that's like that too. Them old gospel hymns in church.
Yes. Turn the lights off and be in the house alone and go ahead and play some of those hymns. You won't do that again.
No.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Nicole, did you have anything you wanted to add to that real quick? Oh, because I know we are like over and it was awesome. And I really feel like we might need to do this again because
please invite me.
Of course, there's so much stuff we didn't talk about. And that's kind of cool because coming in, you felt we don't have a lot of Black horror. There's not enough to actually dive into, but that's not true, really. We've got we don't have enough, but we have stuff that we can really, dig into and think about. I really enjoyed the conversation tonight, I have to say.
Let's do it again. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Please, before we close out the meeting, Michelle, tell us where we can find you. Everybody in turn, say where we can find you, give your website and stuff like that.
I am on all social media platforms, unfortunately.
Do you have a website?
I do. It's michellerlane.com.
Perfect. Mark?
Yeah. You can find me at whoismarklabbott.com. That moniker is also on Facebook. And I believe it is whoismla on Instagram.
Awesome. I will connect.
All right.
Nicole?
You can find me at mochamemoirspress.com on all social media platforms. And you can find me personally at NicoleGivensKurtz.net.
And Jason?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram, Jason's Revelation, or Icefire Martial Arts. I teach kids martial arts. I have a documentary called I Am a Martial Artist. It's been a global award-winning documentary about Black people showing Black love to Black children with autism. So you can find me on Facebook. You know, guys, please connect with me on Facebook. I got a few friend requests already, and I thank you. I look forward to meeting and greeting and learning more about you. So those are the best places. And online, you can find me at icefiremartialarts.com.
Awesome. And I'm Elle Marie Wood, and you can find me at elmariewood.com. Listen, this was great.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight.
Thank you. This was
Thanks,
great.
Lisa.
So
Thanks for having me.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.